paper, I don't even have a snack. Hey, coronavirus, I want my life back.
See, I just saw a mistake I made. It's not part one. Part two, I didn't change that part two. Today we're talking about your work life and what's going to be changing, what may change, what needs to happen for you to get back out into the work world, and maybe some ways that you can protect yourself. And we're getting to that with a very knowledgeable guest on that in just a moment. Good evening, isolators. How are you? It is another beautiful evening. Let's get right to what you are grateful for today, and definitely grateful for the weather. Getting grateful for getting closer and closer to the end of isolation. And of course, this Friday, a lot more things will open up outside of the city anyway, outside of Toronto and Peel, and outside of Windsor, Essex. We are still going to be ourselves stuck in isolation for a little bit longer. The after COVID condo party. Mike, if you plan this party, you can take care of it, my friend. I would love to actually have a party with every single one of you when this is all over. Grateful for my pharmacist. Pharmacists are the unsung heroes in all of this. They fly under the radar all the time and a wealth of information. Grateful for yoga. Well, that's one person. No, there's a lot of you who love yoga. Grateful for family, says Connie. Most definitely. Tracy, grateful again for my lunchtime walks. I went out for a walk last night after the show. It was beautiful. It was just gorgeous. Went down to the lake. Grateful for a slow day at work. Grateful that I was able to go for a walk today. It is so beautiful outside. Grateful for my children's... And then it ended. Grateful for this beautiful weather. So we started yesterday with our series about your new world and about how to prepare for your new world. And one of the suggestions we had yesterday, and I hope that you at least followed up on that, is that you need to start now. If you are going to prepare yourself mentally, physically, and any other way for the new world, you got to start now. So if you went for a walk today, it was your first time for a while, good for you. If you haven't ventured outside very much yet, start getting out. Start getting out there. So as we said yesterday, now is the time to start doing this. So today we are going to be concentrating on how you can best prepare for the new world when it comes to work. Yeah, Office Space. Great movie, but also a biting commentary on your office, your workspace. Isolation, though, may just have taken this template born in the offices of the mid-20th century and significantly changed it. So are you ready for this change in your world, in your work world? My guest is David Zweig, Associate Professor of Organizational Behavior and HR Management, Chair of the Department of Management at the University of Toronto, Scarborough. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you?
I am good. I want to watch Office Space again.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
You should use that in your classes.
Oh, I do.
Oh, do you? It is a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking now about, and it's not just Office Space, it's going back to the workspace in general. So we tend to think as a generic office, the cubicles and things like that, but just going back into work. What is your overall sort of take on what kind of world awaits us in a few weeks?
Yeah, it's really hard to predict. I think we're going to look for signals from, countries that have opened up now and are slowly moving back into whatever the new normal is. Looking at New Zealand to see what's going on there for people going back to work, or even the United States where things have opened up way more broadly than they have here, and seeing, if we make that shift back to what we all think was normal before COVID happened. I'm not sure that we're going to go back to what it was. I think we're going to go back to some sort of hybrid where, now that we've realized that we can work from home, most of us, and can do so effectively and maintaining our levels of productivity, that we may not all want to necessarily go back to the work and, the 5-day-a-week long commute subway ride, car drive, whatever it might be. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out and see what kind of world the organizations want to create again, whether they want their employees to all come back or they're more open to flexible working arrangements.
And you use the word, and the key word here is hybrid,
Yeah,
because we have learned some things, we have tried some things that we've talked about for years. In fact, experts have been telling us, let people work from home. They're more productive. Cut
yeah,
down onto a 4-day work week. Cut down on the 40-hour work week. So
yeah,
we've actually been able to experiment with this. Um,
yeah,
but the rule has been since the 40s and the 50s, you get up, you
yeah,
get into your car, you get
yeah,
into traffic, you go to work, you spend all your time at work for a set amount of hours, and then at
yeah.
5 o'clock you go home.
Sure.
So what
And
have,
in
sorry,
in a few days, that all changed, and all
it,
those
it,
rules went away.
it did. And although, let's put aside the financial considerations,
Yeah,
many people liked it. For those who
sure.
still did go into work, they loved the fact there was no rush hour. For
Yeah,
those staying at home, they could stay at home with their family and work 10 to 6 instead of 9 to 5 or
that's right.
whatever. So did we conduct a good experiment here, and are we going to learn from it?
Oh, it was a massive natural experiment. What it did was it absolutely ripped the lid off this idea of, can we let people work from home? And what we found generally is that yes, we can. For the majority of employees and in a significant number of industries, everyone did pretty well. Productivity levels didn't drop. In fact, in some cases they increase, and we can talk about whether that's necessarily good or bad. And people adjusted; they had no choice but to adjust. But now we're getting into the point in time where we have to start considering what's the future going to look like. So, are we going to go back to what it was? Are we going to now that we know we can work from home effectively? Can we have some sort of deal where it's not every day we need to go into the office? It can be twice a week or whatever it need be. Or do we just stick with what's working right now and we just can maintain our working from home schedule? So it'll be very interesting. A lot of things to consider, a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of some of the pros and cons of either way.
So we can go back to the office. We can go back to our workspace.
Yeah.
Most likely, it's not going to be normal.
No.
But there are things that you have come up with, some tips for employers and managers and for employees
Yeah.
that will help at least ease that change and allow you to adapt back into office life. So let's start off, first of all, with managers and
Yeah.
employees.
Sure.
And we'll start out with your first tip, and that is check in frequently and over communicate. Explain.
Yeah. So, particularly now when we're all still, the majority of us are still working from home, it's really important to check in with your employees very, very frequently. Don't assume just because they're getting their work done and they're meeting their deadlines that everything is okay. You need to check in with them, make sure they're doing well, ask them how they're doing, ask them what they need to help them get their work done more effectively, and even if they need support in other areas in terms of mental health or whatever the need might be. And when I say over communicate, we have to understand that everyone is dealing with a lot of unknown and a lot of anxiety right now. And the best thing a manager or a leader can do is simply communicate very frequently, even if you don't have all the answers. Even if you don't know what it's going to look like in 2 weeks or a month, and whether they're going to have to come back into the office again or what that's going to look like if they do, just saying that we don't know everything, right? We're working on it. We're trying to make sure that we can create a safe environment for everyone. And as soon as we know what it's going to look like, we're going to tell you what it'll be. That's really, really important.
It's been especially tough for employers and managers because they're the ones who are expected to make this work. They're not the CEOs.
That's right.
They're the ones who have said,
Yeah.
just make this work. You have to make
Right.
this company money, so just make it work. So they now have the pressure of trying to come up with the logistics of making this work properly, and at the same time making sure that the mental health of those under them is observed.
Yeah, and it's really hard in this environment to, we've lost the face to face, and we recreate it as much as we can through the computer, but we're missing out on a lot of cues. And so we have to be really, really sensitive and attuned to the messages we're getting from our employees. For example, when I'm having a meeting with my staff members, I'm watching them very closely and not in a surveillance way. I'm literally watching them to see if there's any signs that I'm picking up on that they need something from me. They need my support. They need me to help them fix an issue, or they're looking like, they need to take a break. This month I decided that, I would allow every one of my staff to just pick a day during the month where they could have the day off without calling it a sick day. Just take a day to recuperate and just relax.
A mental health day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Basically. As a way of, they've all been working really hard, and it was just a way of thanking them for all of their work. But I made it clear to them that I didn't want them to work. I wanted to take the day off and do whatever they want, whatever they needed to relax and, regroup and build up their level of tolerance for everything that's going on.
How big a loss is it that we lost the social interaction at work? How big a loss is that?
You know what? Through all of this, I've realized that I'm way more extroverted than I thought I was, and it has been a loss. It's been very difficult. I really miss the interaction with my colleagues and my staff. And for some people, it's going to be felt a lot more strongly. People who are more extroverted and like to be around a lot of other people are going to feel that loss a lot more acutely than people who are more introverted. But of course, we're missing it. So, we do the best we can with trying to have, connections on whatever platform we're using for meetings. Even if it's not about work, it's just about getting together with people and talking about what's going on in their lives to try and recreate some of that being face to face that we used to get in the workplace.
Okay, let's go to the next tip on your list, and that is be mindful of expectations. Whose expectations? Your own?
Your own. What I'm talking about here is the expectations you are setting for your employees. So when I say be mindful, what I'm advising is don't send emails after hours. Just because you're working late and you're sending emails to your staff, what the message you're sending to them is, wow, I better get online and I better respond to this now. So if you are going to send emails after hours or at odd hours, and it's fine to be flexible about all the hours we're working because we all have a number of different responsibilities, just make sure you're telling your staff that I don't expect you to respond now. Respond during normal working hours, or don't respond on the weekend. It's not urgent, so that they know that the expectation isn't that I have to get on right now. Understand that we all have different responsibilities, childcare, elder care, whatever it might be, and be flexible around that. But make sure that, you're not setting unrealistic expectations by your own work habits. If you are working a lot, and you're setting unrealistic expectations for your own employees by letting them know that you're working, many, many hours, because you're sending that message to them, and that's not necessarily a good one to send.
And I'm seeing a lot of comments here out to the side about how my manager has not been in touch with me since the beginning of this. That's not the sign of a good manager.
Probably not. I'd suggest, as I said, this is the time to over communicate. People are experiencing a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of unknown. This is the time when you would hope that your leader is contacting you more rather than less, to make sure that everything is okay and they're communicating whatever information they have openly and frequently.
Do you think it would be a good idea if I felt that I was being more productive at home, that I could try and communicate that, hey, I still want to work from home? And again, we could talk about maybe creating a hybrid here. And how would you go about that?
I think everyone's going to be having those conversations very soon. And everyone's going to have to figure out how to negotiate that conversation with their manager or their leader. And it's also what the organization is demanding or expecting, right? If the big banks suddenly say that they want everyone back in the office towers downtown, there's going to be a lot of pressure on individual employees to say, okay, now I got to go back to that life that I had before. But there is room now to demonstrate with evidence that there isn't a big threat of my working from home and how that's going to reduce my productivity. If you've been able to show to your boss that your work has actually been, work level rather, has been maintained or has even increased when you're working from home, you've got a lot of evidence to make a strong argument for continuing that kind of relationship.
Andrew just made a comment here. I find it almost impossible to turn off. I work day and night. I can't turn it off. Physically leaving work was easier for me, and that's a really good point.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, that's one of the points we're going to get to, but it's very, very important for people to set boundaries. The physically leaving work was a boundary for us that we had to comply with. We don't have that boundary anymore. That boundary between work and our home life is gone. So it's up to us to actually reset the boundaries for ourselves and making sure that we're not sitting in front of our computers longer than we should be just because we've gained a couple hours when we're not commuting to and from work, and making sure that we say at some point, whenever it works for you, saying at some point, you know what, that's enough. I'm going to turn my computer off now, and I'm going back to my home life.
Let's get to point number 3. And this, once again, is for employers and managers. We're going to get to employees in a moment. Be flexible.
Yeah, I mean, you've got people who are dealing with all sorts of things. With young kids, they've taken over the education of their young children, or if they're school-age children, or even younger, taking care of the responsibilities of infants and toddlers. You have people taking care of their parents, and you have all of the pressures that we had before, but magnified now in the situation. So again, you have to be flexible. You have to understand that people have all this stuff going on. If I have to spend the morning working with my 8-year-old on his homework, on his work now for school, that means that I can't start actually working until he's finished. So I might have to work later in the day, and which means I may not get this project or whatever it is done until 6 or 7 at night. But my manager has to be flexible about that and understand my unique situation and allow me to set my hours that work for the situation that I'm in.
As a quick aside here, your son, grade 4, I'm guessing?
He just turned 8, so he's just finishing grade 2.
Grade 2.
I have an older one.
There we go. That's my math is terrible. By the way, Professor, how are you doing with the grade 2 work?
Oh, it's horrible. First of all, because I'm teaching right now and I have some administrative responsibilities, my wife, who's also a professor, she's doing the brunt of it because she's not currently teaching, but it's impacting her ability to get her research done. And so we'll switch because she's teaching in the fall. I won't be, so I'll take over if they're not back in school. But no, it's not. It's hard. It's really hard.
My parents are both professors. Ah, wow.
I can teach adults. I'm not so great at teaching children.
Next point here. Signal trust.
Yeah.
What is that?
This is huge. Throughout this new experiment, this new world that we're in, where everyone is working from home, the temptation will be great for leaders, and many are doing this. We know they're doing this, about using technology, surveillance technology, to monitor their employees. If you talk to an employment lawyer, it's completely legal for them to do this, but that's not something you want to, that's not the signal you want to send to your employees, that you don't trust them and that you're using technology to track how long they're on, logged into the company systems, how long they're not, how long of a break they're taking from work, et cetera, et cetera. It's much more effective, particularly in the long term, in building trust and creating a positive working relationship with your staff and your employees, and staying, not relying on surveillance technologies to monitor your employees. A little bit of trust goes a really, really long way. And what we found from this natural experiment is that people who were productive before have remained productive. Of course, there's always going to be people who might abuse it, but those people are generally limited in number. And so we shouldn't be relying on surveillance technologies to monitor people. A little bit of trust, as I said, goes a really, really long way. It's a lot harder to do, takes a lot more effort, but the long-term payoff is much, much greater.
Do you think there might be a chance that perhaps a change of scenery and that this change of venue for working may actually change maybe an employee who is not that productive into a productive employee?
Hard to tell. I mean, people don't change that much. Situations can have an influence on people's behavior, but generally, if you have someone who is not that productive to begin with, putting them in an environment where there's less structure doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be more productive. But, there are individual differences around that, and some people might respond better in this kind of situation.
I'm just wishful thinking. Your final tip here for employers and managers is interesting because we've been really looking at employers and managers as caregivers almost.
Yeah.
And with any good caregiver, this is a piece of advice you give to them is take care of yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, we're taking on a lot of responsibility, trying to make sure that all of our employees are doing well and all of the things that we need to do it's hard leading people. I mean, particularly when you have a large group of people that you're trying to lead and you're trying to be a good leader for all of them, and which means that you really have to know what they need from you. And certainly when I'm in a leadership situation and when I even teach leadership, what I say is, there's no one best way to lead. You have to know who you're working with and what they need from you and the situation they're in and adjust your behavior accordingly. That's tough. And in this environment where everything just got a lot more complex, it's really important for us to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. As we're taking care of everyone else, we want to make sure that we're not burning out ourselves from all of the stress and all of the everything that's going on. And we need to set reasonable working hours for ourselves, set clear boundaries for ourselves, and make sure we're focused on maintaining our own mental and physical health so that we can help others.
Here's an interesting comment from Kelly. Andrew, a friend of mine, actually created an after-work routine. He goes for a walk around the block, enters the house through a different door, as if he has been away for the day, and he's done this for 5 years, apparently. But, it's sort of putting it up here, saying, okay, I am now done work. I am now home.
Yeah. I mean, there's a time during the day when, my wife and I are sharing an office right now. And we're still married happily, which is good.
But can you wallpaper together? That's the question.
There's a time when, we both turn to each other and say, okay, that's it. Let's go for a walk. Right. And we call an end to the day. We've both worked a long day. And so we both go for a walk. I've never tried going through a different door. That's great. I mean, what we're trying to do is create a physical and psychological boundary. Right. And so doing that allows us to say, okay, our day is over. Now we're moving out of our work selves and into our home selves. And that's really important.
Okay, now let's switch gears and let's talk about the employees, the workers, and things that they should be doing. And, in contrast, you have sort of taken the last point for employers and managers and made it the first point for employees, and that is to take care of yourself.
Yeah. And I did that intentionally because everything I said about, needing a manager needing to take care of him or herself applies to everyone as well. So it is about making sure and very, very aware of how you're feeling. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, what you can do about that, what outlets you have, and reaching out to your boss and asking for support and not being afraid to ask for support, depending on the relationship with your boss. And it's really important to our mental health. And so making sure that we're taking frequent breaks, we're getting away from the computer, or we're going for a walk, we're going for a run, whatever it is. We're eating well and still maintaining all of that. And that'll, and even if we're deciding that the research on working 4 days a week is actually pretty compelling, that the people who are most effective aren't working longer. they're taking frequent breaks, they're recharging, and they're working much more effectively.
And we've already talked about this somewhat, creating boundaries.
Yeah. So what I mean here is like I said earlier, but we have to try and create a physical or even a psychological boundary between our workspace, and our home space. And I realize that this isn't possible for everyone. Many of us live in very small condos in Toronto, but as much as possible to carve out, and if you haven't done it already, to carve out a workspace that is okay. There's my computer, that is work. The rest of my space is not work. Just creating that physical boundary, and even if you're hanging a sheet around your workspace or whatever it is, really helps separate the two, so that when you're not working, you're not looking at that space and going, "Oh, I should be working." Yeah, and that's helping you create a psychological space or psychological distance between work and home life.
I always remembered returning to work after particularly a staycation.
Yeah.
And you're there and you start getting forlorn. You start remembering being at home and being with the kids and working your own hours, and that. How much is that going to play into a lot of people when they're going to go back to a physical workplace away from the home?
I'm sure. I mean, there's going to be a period where we're like, oh God, thank goodness I'm out of the house. I'm so sick of being in the house. And that'll fade, and we'll try and remember the good things about what it was like to have so much time with our family and with our children or whoever our loved ones are. And I'm sure there's going to be a period where we feel nostalgic for this, all the bad things that happened. There has been some good in all of this 4-month isolation that we've been through.
Interesting comment here from Cindy. Need to practice putting on real clothes. Now, I think she's doing that a little bit tongue in cheek. However, I mean, right now I decided not to shave today. This shirt actually I think has a stain. Yeah, there's a stain in this shirt somewhere.
Yeah. I put on a nice shirt just for this.
Oh, thank you. Now you're making me feel bad. But this is something too. Is we wear pretty well no matter what you do, you wear some sort of uniform to work, whether it's a suit and tie, whether it's an actual uniform, or whether it's just dressing a certain way.
Sure.
Is there going to be any change to that? Are we maybe seeing the end of the tie?
I don't think so. I mean, if we're physically going back into our offices, we're going to go back into that pattern very, very quickly. So I don't think there's going to be a major shift to a more casual or more relaxed dress code. It's certainly been nice, I won't lie. But if we're going back into work, I think we're going to very quickly fall back into the same kind of dress codes and the same norms that existed before all of this.
Setting a schedule is the next tip for employees that you have.
Yeah. So if we're all working, we have our families around us, we're in crowded, we might be in crowded spaces. So it's really important that we work together with whoever's sharing our space with us to set a clear schedule. My wife and I will do an inventory at the beginning of the week about what meetings we have or what Zoom things set up or whatever it might be. And so we can carve out time and know where we can work, whether, the partner can stay in the room while this meeting's going on or they have to leave or whatever it is. So working on that schedule will reduce a lot of conflict during the week. And of course, also making sure that, our children understand that from, X time to X time or to Y time, they can't come in and bug us, particularly if we're on a meeting. Unless the house is burning down or something, there's an emergency, that they need to respect that and not to come in and interrupt us, and that will help them as soon as we're available. So setting those boundaries, as much as it's as difficult it is to keep those boundaries, it's to set them, and working through schedules is really important.
Now, this is important, of course, when you're working from home. This next tip. But it's going to be important as well when you go back, because you may not think about it, and that is ask for support. Now, obviously, you're going to ask for support at home, I hope. But when you go back, you might be feeling, well, I can't ask for help here. I'm back at work.
Yeah. Yeah, the good thing about all of this is, right, I think it's really opened people's eyes up or increased their awareness about the need to understand what's going on with your staff or with your employees, and to take a bit of a wider view of what's going on in their lives. I mean, we've all gotten glimpses into our coworkers' lives, right? As we see the backgrounds,
Yeah.
the offices they're in, the children popping in and everything. And I think that's good. It's created a lot of empathy, and a lot of understanding. And it opens up the possibility where people will feel more comfortable asking for what they need in terms of support from their leaders, their managers, and managers should be promoting that, because giving that support helps them accomplish their jobs better, removes the barriers they might have to getting their work done. So it's a great thing to be asking and continuing to ask, even if we move back to the workplace, to continue to have those kinds of conversations with our bosses.
Kelly asked an interesting question here. Where was that? Oh, yeah, right up there. This is interesting. Now, will working from home, when everyone is back to normal, be the same as
Yeah.
it is now? It will cost more for one, maybe. So what about working from home? If you are one of the ones who always did, or are ones who are going to do it from now on, how will that change working from home?
I don't understand. Maybe I need a little more information there. I
Well,
don't know why it would cost more to work from home
yeah,
as opposed to
I'm
going
not
in.
too sure about that. Whether or not you're
Yeah,
going to have to pay for things yourself instead of your company paying for it if you make that choice.
yeah,
I don't
right,
know. But how will working from home, when it's not the norm or when everybody else isn't doing it,
yeah.
is that going to change?
Well, I think perceptions about working from home have changed,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
possibly for the better, right? And so the argument for working from home has become much more compelling. And as I mentioned earlier, now you have evidence to demonstrate that you can work from home effectively. And if that's what you want to continue, you can use that as an argument to continue doing so. And maybe the organization will allow you to do so. So, it's going to be a lot easier for people to make the argument to work from home now because of what's gone on. And now that we know that it isn't the great productivity killer that everyone was so worried about.
Okay, final point for employees. And if you don't mind, I've added something myself here, and that is this red circle, because I
Yeah,
think this is fantastic. And
yeah,
this is something that we need to really consider now and enjoy. The commute time equals relax time.
yeah. 100%. And what I really want to emphasize here is that, that time that we spent commuting, instead of saying, okay, I've now got an extra half an hour or to an hour where I'm not commuting into my office, instead of saying, well, let me start work earlier, take that time as a gift and use it to do something that'll make your work so much more productive. Use it to go for a walk. Use it to engage in a hobby. Use it to do whatever is useful for you to help your mental health and allow you to better tackle the day. And even at the end of the day, right? Take that time that you had when you were spending, commuting. Take that time back and don't think, oh, I'm just going to work another hour and a half because I'm not commuting, so I might as well work. And cherish that time while we still have it, and make the best of it and use it to recuperate from your day.
So just before we wrap up here, where are we going to land, do you think, on, when it comes to markers or milestones? So we go from working on the farm to leaving the farm to work off the farm in a business or a company like that. We
Yeah.
go then into the mid 20th century of working into cubicles and offices and bringing briefcases home.
Mm-hmm.
We go into more telecommuting by the time we get into the 90s and early 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what are the business history books going to mark down this period of COVID isolation? What do you think? Is it going to be a major shift?
I'm not a business historian. I'll try to forecast the future a little bit, and I don't know. I think there's going to be a shift. I don't know how fundamental the shift is going to be. What's really going to, I think, be a catalyst is whether or not we have to return to the workplace and still engage in a lot of like social distancing to keep us safe, or whether or not there's a vaccine that's developed that turns out to be effective and we can go back to the way it was. I think if there is, a vaccine, we can all go back safely. I think it will depend on, the individual organizations or industries and what they want as the new normal. I mean, organizations are thinking about, okay, this experiment is generally working. We're reducing our real estate costs by having everyone work from home. Maybe we don't need to have all of these offices, we can have much smaller footprints. And so it depends what they want. And I think that'll drive how big of a shift this is. So if the major banks say, everything's okay now, everyone come back, everyone's going to come back, right? If some of them say, no, we want to do a hybrid model, then that'll be what happens. So it's really going to be what the organizations want to go back to. And it's hard to tell. If we don't have a vaccine and we have to continue the social distancing, even at work, this will stick around for a while. The open offices are not going to be popular anymore, and they're not going to be the way we can work. So it's really going to depend on what happens with the course of this pandemic.
All right. Professor Zweig, thank you very much for this time. It's been quite enlightening and some very good advice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And take care.
All right. Have a great night and be safe.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, fascinating. Professor David Zweig, Associate Professor of Organizational Behavior and HR Management, Chair of the Department of Management at the University of Toronto, Scarborough. We have to give that consideration. He brought up something else that I really hadn't considered, and that was we're still in a time of social distancing. So when we return to work, and if we're still in that time, what will that look like? Board meetings have been replaced by Zoom meetings. Well, what are you going to do? You can do a Zoom meeting now from your desk. I don't know. So it is very much a grand experiment. It's going to be interesting. When it comes right down to it, the bottom line is going to be what makes the most financial sense for a company. So they have to take productivity into account, but they also have to take overhead and workspace and supplying all the needed tools for employees. Is it easier? Is it cheaper to shut down some offices and have them work from home, or do that 2 or 3 days a week so that you can share office space, shared workspace? It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be very, very interesting. Okay. Now I have something to talk to you about, and that is in regards to this show itself. The final episode 100 will be Sunday, June 28th. I sort of looked ahead. I've sort of thought, okay, is it time? So I want to know what it's like being a member of this isolator family. So starting sometime tonight, if you could, and over the next few days, could you shoot a short video and send it to kevinsisolators@gmail.com, or you can messenger it to me or tweet it to me, whatever. Just get it to me in the next couple of days. I'd like to put together a montage of your thoughts, your feelings, directly from you. So I'd like to hear about that. I'm not fishing for compliments, okay? So I'm not looking for anything like that. I'm looking for how this experience has changed you. I've watched with great interest and great fondness the message board off to the side throughout this entire thing, and to see this family develop, and it's been fantastic. I mean, today you spent the first 15 minutes talking about Mike's stupid party, but I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't know if there's going to be a different incarnation of this show following June 28th. I don't know. I've enjoyed it. I will miss doing this. but I got to find a job and I got to find something to do. And so I maybe, I don't know. There may be something after June 28th. I don't know, but I know it won't be a daily show every evening at 7 p.m. So you tell me what you think should happen, what you would like to see. So once again, just to remind you that the final show, episode 100, will be Sunday, June the 28th, and I'm asking you what it's been like to be a part of this isolator family. And I know some of you talk even outside of the show, and I think that's fantastic. So shoot me a short video of what it has been like and send it off to me at kevinsisolators@gmail.com. So Linda says maybe we'll call it the goat line. That didn't work out. You notice we didn't do the goat line anymore. I got rid of my goatee. It just didn't work out. Nobody wanted to go on the phone. Is that now old news? People just don't go on the phone anymore. I don't know. Our radio call-in shows doomed. People just don't want to use the phone anymore. They want to text and they want to do that. Should we have a party? I don't know what a party would look like. I really don't. I would love to. So thank you very much for joining me. Tomorrow, what did I want to look at? I'm not sure. I know on Friday I want to look at preparing your kids for the return from isolation. So in return to the new normal and the new world. So we're doing that on Friday. I want to talk about either tomorrow or Thursday. I also want to talk about the new world of shopping. Is online shopping going to overtake bricks and mortar stores? Are we going to be seeing these lineups for how much longer? And how much longer are you, as a consumer who wants instant gratification, how long are you willing to stand outside a Canadian Tire or outside the LCBO for what you want to do? It's interesting. Everything is new in the new world. So we'll talk tomorrow again, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Thank you so much for your time tonight. It really means a lot to me. It really, really does. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.
COVID-19, why you do this to me? I really don't like being stuck in quarantine. I have no toilet paper, I don't even